Oh shit, right, okay. This is the worst start to an episode, I'm so sorry.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar with me, James Smith.
Me, Neil Brock.
And me, James Eckhart.
It's a movie podcast!
We can do characters that fly and shoot laser beams and do woo.
Beneath all of that, it's all about friendship.
Playing the drums until his hands are bleeding.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each head off and watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone, then waffle about it for your listening pleasure.
Furthermore, if you want to join in and suggest a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off-Radar Podcast or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share and review. It really helps getting the pod out there. For now, strap in, turn the volume up and let's go Off Radar.
I think you need to turn off Etok's camera already.
Hello and welcome back to Series 2 of Off Radar. And if you haven't listened to us before, this is a film podcast and I'm James Smith and I am joined by James Etok.
Hello.
Who we call Etok, and
Yes,
Neil Brock.
Hello.
Who we call Nige. And there's a, as I say on every episode, there's a long-winded explanation to that somewhere. But go and find it. It's like a little Easter egg.
Yeah.
What terrible Easter egg. That's like
That's
the
the
Easter egg
worst.
that's definitely melted and like, oh, I really don't want this. So,
It's quite a boring one, isn't it, really? Why we call you
cheers, mate.
Nige?
Yeah. Oh, well. So, yeah, go look for that in a previous episode, you lucky things.
So anyway, today we are here to talk about yet another film, and it's called The Rum Diary. Is it The Rum Diary or Rum Diaries?
It's Rum Diary.
Rum Diary, just one diary.
Just one diary, yeah.
And this is a film written and directed by Bruce Robinson. I wrote Bryce down on my notes, which is helpful.
That's all right.
Who you may know, who directed With Now and I, is probably his most famous film, I would say. He also did How to Get Ahead in Advertising, which I've not seen.
Oh, yeah, that's got Jonathan Pryce in, I think, maybe.
Ah, okay.
Off the top no, that may be Richard E. Grant as well, actually, saying that. Yeah, I think it is Richard E. Grant. It's a bit of a British classic, I would say.
Yeah, okay. And so I've seen With Nail and I a long time ago, but not that. And it's based on a book by Hunter S. Thompson, and it stars it's got a big cast, actually. So it's obviously got Johnny Depp, Aaron Eckhart, Michael Rispoli?
Oh, the guy with the voice. Yeah,
he's really good.
Michael Rispoli? Amber
We're just
Heard.
going to let you butcher it. We're not going to try and correct you because we have no idea.
No, we'll equally butcher it.
In a minute.
We'll be the three butchers of this podcast.
Big Mike, us. I know.
Big Mike.
We're calling Mike. Heavy Mike.
Mike, yeah. Hefty Mike.
Richard Jenkins, and then Giovanni Ribisi.
Giovanni Ribisi.
Yeah, that's it.
Giovanni Ribisi, who we know from...
He's been in loads of stuff,
He's been in loads of things.
Saving Private Ryan, Boiler Room, Friends are the ones I can think of.
He was in an episode of X-Files with Jack Black where they played like electrocuting people. It's quite a good.
The scary thing about him is he's had such a long career, old Giovanni. He's been around since the mid-90s, and he was. I'm sure he must have been super young then, but it's like he's never had a never-ending career.
It does, yeah, and he just pops up in films that you forget he's in.
Yeah, you're sitting there watching a film, like even with this, even though I saw this many years ago, and then selected this film. I was like watching it going, oh yeah, he's in it. Of course he is. I mean, playing a very unique character. But yeah, he's had a very varied and long career. And long may it continue.
Yeah, but he's an excellent actor. And just before we get going, so Etok, yeah, as you say, you picked this film for us to watch. I'd not seen it before. Nige, had you seen this film?
No, and I'm quite interested to know why you picked this film, because it's not
a
one I'd really heard of or knew all that much about, albeit being a big fan of Hunter S. and knowing obviously Johnny Depp's work. So yeah, please let us know.
It's a very minor story that kind of ties into Smith's world. I was working at Sony. Remember that little foray? And I was, my job was DVD quality control, so DVD Blu-ray quality control. As Smith well knows, that was my job for many years. And yeah, I was just handed this film on my desk. They were like, can you watch it and give it chapter titles and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, sure. So that's, I can't imagine it's one of those films that I would have sought out or even, just seen by chance, because it's not really popular or anything like that. Apparently it did very bad at the box office. But it was sort of like, I saw it and I won't give my review yet, but I was very glad I saw it. But that's how I discovered it, watching it on Blu-ray, because it was my job. I think I had to watch it, again, it's one of those things, I had to watch it like 3 or 4 times as part of my job. I think I had to watch it in Spanish at one point as well. So, Como te llamas? Me llamo Johnny Depp. There you go.
Puerto Rico. I came down here looking for a story.
It's called journalism.
Your resume here. Don't look so anxious. I wouldn't have paid for your hotel if I hadn't already hired you.
So, the film is set in the 1960s and primarily in Puerto Rico. I'm pronouncing that weird as well. My pronunciation's off today. So, Depp is Paul Kemp. He's a writer who's kind of got writer's block, and he goes out to work for this newspaper out there. And it kind of follows his adventures while he's out there. I know, obviously, him being the lead, that's a no-brainer. But while he's out there, he wants to write the truth, he keeps saying. He's like a big discovery. He's a writer, and they're like, oh, can you write star sign columns or this, that, and the other? And he's like, but I want to write about the truth, about Americans coming to Puerto Rico and then literally just staying in their hotels and going bowling and do it, and not being a part of the country itself, just going in and I guess abusing the ability, because they're so rich when they go there. It's a lot of retirees go there. So and he said Ross Kemp. So Paul Kemp wants to write the don't laugh, Smith. Don't laugh.
Ross Kemp in Puerto Rico.
Ross Kemp.
Exploiting the locals.
Yeah.
I'm going to exploit you.
I'm
going to
talk about it. Yeah.
Him and Aaron Eckhart. That would be great.
Oh God, what a team up!
That's the sequel, the Rum Diaries. So, just so you know.
Please stop it! I got the giggles. Right, so Kemp wants to write the truth, but his boss won't let him. His boss is like, look, we're just putting out a paper. People just want to read the happy news, and it's primarily their readership are American. So it's like, just put out the happy news. This is a wonderful place to come, a wonderful place to be, because tourism is what we're attracting. But also you find out during the movie that Aaron Eckhart's character, who's like an incredibly powerful man on the island, is an American businessman, but he's someone that basically wants to almost bulldoze the beauty and put up buildings and make more money off the tourist industry. So there's that kind of side to it. And they want to use Kemp's character, Johnny Depp's character, as a way of putting out the narrative that, oh, come here, it's great. Whereas Kemp wants to write the truth that, no, you people, Americans are coming over here and we're actually kind of destroying this land. During his adventures, he meets Amber Heard's character, who in a deleted scene we tried pronouncing, but we've gone with Chanel or Chanot or Chernobyl. So it's one of those, but I'm going to call her Amber Heard because that's what a classy dude I am. He meets Amber Heard. She's I don't know if she's married to Aaron Eckhart's character.
No, just his girlfriend.
Just his girlfriend. And he treats her like almost like a possession at times. But she and Johnny Depp fall in love, as they did in real life, and that worked out really well for them both. So they have this like really kind of passionate love affair and stuff, and it kind of goes off into like almost like misadventure territory.
And if the drinking doesn't get you into trouble,
How does anybody drink 161 miniatures?
are they not complimentary? The women definitely will.
I thought maybe you were a mermaid.
I'm from Connecticut.
Stay away from her. She's Sanderson's fiancée.
She sunbathes in the nude.
There's a bit of an extra dynamic with one of the guys he works with, like his journalists. Obviously, he works at the newspaper. There's a photographer that works there. He knows
Is it Sal, isn't it? Is it Sal? I think his name is.
It may well be, I think so. But this guy, he kind of knows the lay of the land. He's been there a while. He kind of he's very nice to sort of Johnny Depp's character as soon as he gets there. Like Johnny Depp's character gets there drunk, which is obviously a bit of a theme of the film being called the Rum Diary. Before he meets the editor-in-chief played by Richard Jenkins, he says to him, whatever you do, don't look at his wig, kind of thing. And as soon as he goes in there, his wig is just like ridiculous. It's like puts Donald Trump to shame, that kind of thing. And and he's just like almost like his best buddy. And you sort of mentioned the misadventures. Quite a lot of the ones that happen to his character happen with this guy. So it's quite a nice dynamic. And the photographer's other flatmate is played by Giovanni Ribisi, who is basically someone who went to the island to do a similar kind of thing. It was like a journalist, went to the island and essentially lost his mind a little bit due to loads and loads of alcohol.
Lauderman can't fire him because he never sees him. He's rarely out in daylight.
Looks like he enjoys a drink.
The entire substructure of his brain is eaten away with rum.
It's just like a weird, kind of very confused human being. You don't get the impression that he's a racist. You just get the impression that he's pretty screwed up in so many ways. It's not he's like an active racist. I don't think you see any of that in the film. But I think you beautifully described his character there. He went out there to do very much the same thing that Johnny Depp did, but got caught up in the booze. I mean, there's that scene where he's got the drink and he's like it's like 98% proof or something like that's impossible. And he drinks it, lights a match and breathes fire. But it's a great scene.
Hey, don't drink that here.
Just a nipperoo, homeboy. Quality test. Man, slow motion murder just like they do in the movies. See him flying back. Fucking arms flapping in the air. Okay, mother. Look upon the last face, you'll see this side of hell. Bam!
His character, kind of like with a lot of his roles, Ribisi, it's like a bit of a scene stealer, which I think is why he's not present in a lot of the film. He kind of turns up, and every time he turns up, it's like, oh my God.
He's almost like a bit of a warning character for Depp, isn't he? That he could
very
go
much so.
Into that path. And
you could easily slip.
Yeah, because Johnny Depp is obviously, like a drunk, but he, being Johnny Depp, he's very cool. He never looks hungover, whereas Ribisi's character is like basically the polar opposite, where he looks like a complete and utter mess. So it's like a look into the future of what Depp's character could be like.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Yeah.
It's quite interesting, actually. Like, obviously, we mentioned earlier that Hunter S. Thompson wrote this, and it's a novel, but it wasn't a novel that Hunter S. Thompson ever actually finished or kind of got to the point where someone would buy it. It was one where Johnny Depp found it after Hunter S. had passed away, because those two were good friends in real life, hence why they did kind of Fear and Loathing and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the book, the novel I should say, is quite autobiographical of Hunter S. Thompson, who was obviously a gonzo journalist, wanted to write fiction as well, obviously had quite a lot of adventures in various parts of the world, and of course with alcohol, mind-altering drugs. There's a scene where they try LSD, for instance, and essentially kind of lose their mind. There's very similar kind of situations to Fear and Loathing, I would say.
Well, I mean, I think the key thing about this film is Johnny Depp essentially plays the same character. It's almost like a younger version of the character he plays in Fear and Loathing, like that voice. I read an interview, this is like when it came out at the time, and he said he pretty much did like the same character. He played it in the same way. That kind of he's like brought his octaves down. He's like way down here, and he's kind of talking at a very agitated pace, kind of thing. And what are you saying? Da, 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 da.
Now, all this might sound like some crazed hallucination, but it's all true. I think.
And it's when you watch Fear and Loathing and Rum Diary and do a comparison, they're so similar in terms of that character, at least.
Yeah, well, it's interesting as well. Like Smith said earlier about Bruce Robinson, who obviously he adapted the screenplay, he wrote it, directed it, and both him and Johnny Depp were kind of sort of teetotal or former alcoholics before they started working on this film. Bruce Robinson, when he started to adapt the screenplay, was actually drinking a bottle of wine every day until he finished it. So obviously he kind of fell off the wagon, and Johnny Depp sort of suspended his sobriety, however you want to pronounce it, in order to experience the effects of the kind of liquors depicted in the film. So obviously when he's drinking rum in the film, he's kind of doing it in real life, and I think you can kind of see that a little bit in his performance. Obviously he's had his demons with alcohol and everything else like that, but he kind of thought it was a price worth paying and to kind of be authentic to the role. So it's quite interesting that both him and the screenwriter did that.
Yeah, no, I think what you say there, like that's a not to do my summary just yet, but I think the word you use there, I think is it feels the film itself just feels authentic throughout. Yeah, there are some silly scenes and stuff like that, but there is like an authenticity to the performances, and I think one of the best things about the film is they really, almost like the Talented Mr. Ripley, where we saw them transport us back in time, and we just felt like we were there. Here, we feel like we're in Puerto Rico in the 1960s. It just feels very of its time. It doesn't feel like we're jumping around or anything like that. It's it's just an authentic movie, I think, especially visually and tonally. There we go, tonally.
That's one of the things I wrote down actually about Ripley. Really similar, kind of the big kind of vibrant colours, the blues scene, but then it also shows the split in the money and the class system.
Absolutely,
and the kind of. What I really enjoyed about Aaron Eckhart's character's contrast with Depp's way of living. So Aaron Eckhart lives in this big plush house on the sea, and then Depp is staying in this like horrible, dingy, like dark kind of like townhouse with I can't remember what the guy's called, but
Sal.
I
think it's Sal.
Yeah, who's
I like it. He sells it to him. He's like, "You said there was a telly." He's like, "Yeah, the neighbour over there, he's got a telly," and we watch it with binoculars.
Hey, you made it.
Thought you said you had a TV.
The guy across the alley has a TV. I have binoculars.
It's like,
that's good.
Because
his
so
wife's
good.
deaf. He turns it up really loud.
That's right. He turns out real loud.
Yeah, the comedy between them two in particular works really well. Actually,
Absolutely.
There's a scene where they're like. They're in a car. I can't quite remember why they're in a car, but they're in a car and the car like packs up. So like Johnny Depp has to sit on Sal's
on his lap,
and they're bouncing along. It's actually quite near the end of the film, but there's a cop that they've already had an encounter with, like driving by.
He's driving by. He's like, make a left.
Front seat's gone.
I've got a brilliant idea.
Try and look normal.
That's somewhere between like Fear and Loathing and like the Pink Panther or something like that. It's very
good
very
point.
Unusual tone to sort of, but it's funny, and it is like because they kind of go from being in a situation where they enrage some locals, partly because one of them has kind of seen Johnny Depp hanging out at Aaron Eckhart's wonderful beachside pad.
And Eckhart is a monster to these people. He's like,
Absolutely.
get off this. It's private property. It's like, it's a beach, and they've come through the forest onto the beach. They've got every right to be here. And he's like, and probably he does own that land, but he's horrible to them. His attitude is like, we've come here, we're going to build our hotels, we're going to destroy this land, and we're going to make lots of money. And so Aaron Eckhart is a wonderfully passively aggressive bad guy. But in those moments of aggression, you're like, oh, he's dangerous.
And with him, Amber Heard's character kind of. She looks to wind him up constantly throughout the film, and she's like in a club dancing with other men and stuff like that, and she's basically pushing his buttons. And actually, Johnny Depp's character, to be fair to him, although they kind of fall in love quite early on, like she kind of comes onto him and he kind of says no basically and does the honourable thing, and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. I thought he was going to kiss her there, and that's nice because I thought it was quite obvious that they were just going to get together and kind of that would be the start. But he does come across as a nice guy to begin with, Johnny Depp's character, underneath the drugs and the alcohol and the kind of deluded kind of way of life that he is living.
Oh, he's got certain moral. Yeah, he's got values. It's just they're under a sea of booze, basically.
But I don't think she necessarily falls in love with him. I think it's more that he sort of sees her in this like opening scene where she's swimming naked in the sea whilst he's on a little like pedalo or something like that.
My boyfriend's making the speech. It takes exactly 21 minutes.
Well, then I guess it's pointless me inviting you for a drink.
What you got?
No, I mean at the bar.
And from that point on, she's obviously, as you said, she's kind of pushing Aaron Eckhart's buttons, and she kind of does something similar to Johnny Depp. Like there's a scene where they're driving in a car and she's like, oh, how fast can you go? Which I'll make you a bet kind of thing, like which one of us will scream. And she kind of ends up sort of using him a little bit to kind of, when she gets booted out by Aaron Eckhart, she kind of goes to stay with him, and then when it suits her, she leaves him some money and just buggers off to like New York, I think.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression, obviously you can tell she's like a troubled soul, as it were, but I kind of get the impression in the film that she does fall for him in a way, but almost because he's a better option than Aaron Eckhart, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't have all the money and everything, but I think she falls for a part of his personality, whether it's the fact he's nice rather than Aaron Eckhart. Also, it's Johnny Depp, so she probably was like, oh, he looks like Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
But no, I think one of my favourite scenes in the film, one of my favourite scenes in cinema history is the aforementioned scene that Nige said, where they first meet, and she's doing the skinny dipping, and he's on the was it Pedalo thing?
Something like that.
Yeah. And they have this conversation. She's being somewhat like, he's just absolutely fascinated by this. Yeah, I thought you were a mermaid kind of thing. But he says one of the best lines that I remember someone a few years back said to me, have you ever seen the Rum Diary? And I was like, oh yeah, we were talking. I said, it's got one of my favourite lines in the movie. And the guy repeated the exact same line to me. I was like, that's the line. When she swims away and Johnny Depp just says to himself, oh God, why does she have to happen?
Oh, God. Why did she have to happen? Just when I was doing so good without her.
Just when I was doing so good without her. And I love that line, because it's like, yeah, my life was fine. Then she happened. And it's like, oh my God, now what's going to... I love that line. It's like, you're like... And it's true of, I guess, love and relationships, especially ones that are kind of tempestuous. It's like, oh, I'm in this place. It's all good. My life is my life. Oh, no, I've got to think about somebody else. You two are married. So, yeah, I mean... I'll just leave that there.
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, that scene I think is really beautiful, and the score to it, the music is it's such a beautiful scene. I could watch it over and over again. It's a very romantic scene. The sad thing is, obviously, it's tinged with, in hindsight, it's like, man, because obviously in the real world, what happened to those two? They fell in love, and then they had a very public, nasty separation, and it's quite weird to see that scene now, and try not to think of the real people involved.
Yeah.
That's why I always try and...
No, I was just going to say, I find it quite hard to watch Johnny Depp, like, just in films generally, because...
Oh, really?
Well, I think, like, he's either... Generally, he plays either, like, a Tim Burton kind of love child or this very weird character. So I always feel like I'm watching Johnny Depp. Do you know what I mean?
You're never watching a character Johnny Depp's playing.
I don't believe him enough that, he's just a caricature quite often. And I think, again, in this film, he does play a very similar, to what we've seen in something like Fear and Loathing.
I totally understand that criticism. Like, I think for me, I wouldn't profess to seeing a lot of Johnny Depp films. So when I see him in something like this and Fear and Loathing, it does feel like a one-off. Like, I never watched the pirate movies. What, the Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah.
I never watched those movies. It's like, I'm playing Jack Sparrow, or I'm doing whoever it was from the Rolling Stone, or whatever it was. And it was
Keith
just like,
Richards.
Keith Richards. No, I was going to say Keith Moon. It's like, no, that's the other band. But yeah, Keith Richards doing that whole thing, and it was it almost becomes a parody of itself. The funny thing, like, not to go on a whole Johnny Depp thing here, but I remember I read a review, or he was on like a talk show once, and he said that he never ever watches himself back in movies. It's like, wait, you've never seen any of your movies? Because surely that's a bit of a litmus test, is you watch yourself in a movie and go, oh, in future I won't have that mannerism or something, or what, you know what I mean? That seems
not critiquing his own performances.
Yeah.
I listen to our podcast over and over again.
I do.
Why did I say that?
I listen to them naked, but that's another story altogether. When I'm pretending to be a mermaid for Smith. Yeah. I thought you were a mermaid. I'm from Enfield. It's just like, oh God, why did he have to happen in my bath?
At the moment, again, I swear I say this every podcast, we've been in, obviously, the situation with the pandemic and everything else. It's not like we're going on many holidays or any sort of overseas holidays. One of the things I most enjoyed about this film was it was like I was on holiday watching the film, like the colours, the scene in Puerto Rico, all that kind of thing. And it was quite uplifting in that regard, actually kind of feeling like you're part of that sort of situation. I know, as we've touched upon, there's kind of the two sides. There's like the glamorized, the wonderful tourism side, and then there's kind of like the bleak underbelly, the homeless children, something else we haven't talked about. The cockfighting. I was just going to put that into context before. I was just like, cockfighting, because some people may not be familiar that birds do that kind of thing. They may think it's some kind of cross swords, weird porno type of situation going on. So just to clarify, it's kind of like cockerels, chickens fighting each other, which kind of plays quite a big role in like the conclusion of the film, which
bizarrely,
very weirdly.
Like, that's one of the things about this film, and I think it was probably due to the novel itself. There's kind of a lot of loose ends, a lot of things that don't necessarily sit that well together. I mean, there's Johnny Depp's character kind of carries you through it, and there's good bits about it, but a lot of the other characters, like especially Amber Heard's, it's quite bland. There's not really that much to it. This is sort of how I felt anyway, and I think because it was a little bit disjointed, some things worked and some things didn't. Like, as we mentioned earlier, the bit about the kind of car chase against the people who didn't like Johnny Depp because he'd been hanging out with Aaron Eckhart, and they end up like trashing his car and things like that. It's quite cool and quite well done. But then there's other bits that kind of don't sit as easy. At least they didn't for me.
When I rewatched this, I remember there was one scene I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this was in it. And I think that's by choice, was the thing where they go to Giovanni Ribisi's voodoo priestess. And it's like, what? That thing feels like you need to bless this cockerel because he's going to go into a fire. I didn't mind the cockerel stuff as much because obviously I did think the film didn't need it, but I understood where it was carrying the whole thing of this is how we can make some money in order to get the newspaper up and running and print the truth, which I kind of like that ending. But I think they didn't need, they could have avoided the whole cockerel fight and found some other almost more, I'm not going to say believable, but a more subtle way of making money. But the voodoo scene, I remember just thinking, this feels like 10 minutes of the film that just doesn't need to be present. And it feels like, I think the only problem I think this film has at times is its shift in tones. Like sometimes it can feel like a really serious drama. Then it's like a bit of a love story. Then it becomes like, as you said, Nige, like a slapstick, almost like Pink Panther comedy. Then it's a very serious scene again, and then it kind of jumps about in tone. That's like obviously then you've got the bits which are almost very Hunter S. Thompson, where they're going on drug trips and his tongue comes out and he's got like a really long tongue. So it jumps about a little bit too much in that sense.
I think I'd agree with that. I think that was one of the things that kind of I took away from it. That I'm not sure if it's like you said, the book or the adaptation, but I felt like a lot of the scenes were very good, but it felt like not all the scenes kind of felt like they went together. It was like some I was like, oh, I really enjoyed that scene. I'm not really sure where it fits in this story, but it's funny. And then like you said, like I'm watching quite a shocking cockfight, like something from like Amorous Perros, like, you know, with the dog fighting. I'm like, you know, like that comparison to so. And the other thing on the script, as we're talking about the script, I guess I found, you know, it's super sharp, like almost too clever at times. Like every line seems to be like a obscure metaphor. And while I found that quite charming and funny to begin with, I found like after a while it was a bit too much. It kind of took away some of that reality of like how people talk. And again, I'm not sure if that is the book or the adaptation. Probably the book, if it was never intended to be finished or turned into a film, and maybe the adaptation has, you know, maybe they could have adapted that a bit better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think like the biggest kind of exclamation mark, whatever you want to call it, for this film in terms of the fact it is quite so disjointed is at the very end of the film, spoiler alert of course, everything happens and then it's kind of like, sort of lines come up on the screen saying, she goes off to New York, he stayed in Puerto Rico for a bit, then they eventually met up, got married, blah 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 blah, and it's just like, what? It's just a bit.
Yeah.
It's just a very strange ending to kind of be like, oh, we've kind of done with this bit of the story now. Let's just like tack on a bit of like written text for the kind of conclusion, and then we're done. And it's just like
it's almost a bit of. I described it in my thing as a Hollywood ending, because he goes off to, as he keeps saying, like, fight the bastards kind of thing, like write the truth, and expose politicians and corruption in the world. That's what he goes off. Like, he literally sails off into the sunset. But like Nige says, suddenly a caption comes up and it's like, oh yeah, don't worry everybody, he ended up getting married. They found each other, and yeah, he lived happily ever after. And it's like, wait, what? I almost feel like he should have sailed off into the thing and into the sunset, and that was the end or something. And you're like, oh, I wonder what adventures he had next. And for me, it didn't ruin everything that came before it, but I can understand how it would kind of upset the balance, especially in a film that, whilst linear, is a little bit. Again, another word in my review I wrote, haphazard. I said it does tend to go a little all over the place.
Yeah, definitely.
But it does have a weird plot, which is A to B. Like that plot is very linear, but it does go beep, 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 and you're like, where are we going now? Okay, we're over here.
And bizarrely, sometimes I feel like with Fear and Loathing, which before watching this film I didn't realise that it was the same writer as Fear and Loathing. So the first thing I wrote down when I was watching the film was poor man's Fear and Loathing. But with Fear and Loathing, it goes super far. Like, it pushes you into like craziness. And sometimes with this, it doesn't. And I feel like the tongue bit was really random.
The tongue bit is something you would have. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Swift. The tongue bit is something from Fear and Loathing,
right? And then I'm like, if they're going down that path, go further, elsewhere or something like that. Or, and I just felt it was a bit confused overall. Saying that, like we've kind of said, I really enjoyed the start of it. I really enjoyed the kind of like being transported into the 60s and the time. I actually thought probably the strongest actor in it, personally anyway, was Aaron Eckhart. I felt like I've seen him as so many kind of cool, nice characters that it kind of surprised me that he was like so kind of strong and assured and a bit of a bastard in this role.
Oh yeah.
So I actually really enjoyed his screen presence. I actually felt it was more screen presence than Depp in a way, and when they're on screen together, like I enjoyed Depp's comedy with him. I felt like them two worked well together. But I guess overall, it just didn't make me probably invest in care enough due to that disjointedness.
Yeah, I think you've summed that up pretty well. I mean, for me, the only difference to what you've just said, really, I really like Michael Rispoli's sort of character, the sort of photojournalist. I think their dynamic plays really well. I think he's a bit of a ridiculous character, but he's quite interesting. And I think like Richard Jenkins as well. Richard Jenkins is like a really, really good actor. He's like brilliant in so many things. Like, I remember seeing him in 6 Feet Under and just being blown away by him. And he's just really underutilized in this. He's just like an editor that doesn't really do much. He's a bit of a stickler for the rules, whatever you want to call it. Kind of rubs up Johnny Depp's character the wrong way. Kind of gets bullied a bit by Giovanni Ribisi's character.
But no, I understand your criticisms. I think I'm always gonna, when we come to rate this, I think I'm gonna have it slightly high, just because, I worked on this. I watched it numerous times, and I will say I kind of fell for this movie in a weird way, as Johnny Depp did with Amber Heard. I kind of fell for it. It's like, it's like Nige said. There's something weirdly. Maybe it's just the year we've been in, but there's something weirdly uplifting about this film, even though at its core it's quite a dirty, hot, sweaty, grimy film. But there's something, I don't know, there's something like beautiful about that. The way, like I said, that we've all said they capture that feeling so well. That newspaper office, it's like, wow, like that would never ever exist these days. People on typewriters, things, all going on. It's all done, with emails and stuff now. So I don't know. There's something really. Yeah,
it was a bit of Ripley mixed with Superman.
Yeah.
In the Daily Planet, but
yeah, it's good.
Very nice callback to some.
Nice callback, Smith.
Yeah, go listen to them. So. Ratings wise, should we do ratings as well?
I think so.
Yeah. I think we've reached that point.
Well, we started with you, so we'll finish with you.
That's what they all say.
No, you'll start the finish.
You'll start it with. Yeah, we'll start.
Do you want me to get in the bath?
Oh no! I'm getting in the bath. Is he going to go last? That's the thing.
What do you want me to do?
Oh God, I don't know now.
What do you want me to do? Yes.
Get in the bath.
Get in the bath. Get into your mermaid costume. We're doing. E-Talk. Yeah. What was? How did you rate this film then?
Out of 10, I gave it. It's one of those. When you I've done all my ratings for all the movies we've kind of covered in advance, and it's like I've got it there, and I'm like, is that too low? Is that too high? I'm going to stick with it. I'm going for 7.5.
Cool.
That's James E-Talk's review.
Yeah, for me, it was a 6. Yeah, enjoyed but didn't love.
Yeah, sort of similar to that. I also decided to go with a good old fat 6, which for me is kind of a bit of a middle of the road type rating. It's like if you catch it on TV and you watch it, you think, yeah, that's all right, but you don't really think much more than that. And it's not a film that I personally would go back and watch, which is weird because other 6s maybe I would. I don't know, but regardless, yeah, it was an okay film. I think you'd watch it and you wouldn't regret watching it. I just think that there are better films sort of this ilk, including Fear and Loathing, that might maybe worth watching instead. So.
Well, there you go. That was our thoughts on the Rum Diary. And yeah, E-Talk loved that one, didn't he? And me and Nige, well, he thought it was okay. So, whose team you on this week? Let us know. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. You can tweet us at offradarpodcast. You can follow us on Facebook at offradarpod. All the links are in the description down below, so you don't have to remember this. Why don't you give us your rating for this film or any of the films we've reviewed so far, and we will give you a shout out on the pod. Next time, we have a super duper special episode for you. We have our horror movie Halloween special. So join in then, and we'll speak to you next time on Off Radar.